Hello YouTube, Bane666 here. Welcome to Propaganda of Toxic Feminism, the series in which I expose and debunk falsehoods, misconceptions and outright lies spread about the men's rights movement. So let's get stuck into it. So recently I came across a fairly new channel on YouTube called TheSkeptic Feminist. The title is probably a little bit misleading because, well, there's actually three of them.
We are the Skeptic Feminist, a group of radical feminists and firebrand atheists. Radical because we don't cut any form of sexism, religious or otherwise, any slack, not even the dreaded Islam.
And I guess there are some others who might argue that their title is also a little bit misleading in the sense that they're not really skeptical. From my point of view, the jury is still out on that one. I've personally had some very pleasant conversations with them in the comment section, and some which make me question their skepticism a little bit. I won't be able to go into those comments in this particular video just for time, but I might go through those comments in a later video. Also, from the videos I've seen of theirs, they can come across as somewhat arrogant and dismissive. That to me doesn't really seem overly skeptical. So I honestly don't know how to judge them at this point. The fact that there's also three of them makes it a little bit harder, because when you're talking to someone in the comment section, you really don't know which one you're talking to, and the person you're exchanging comments with one day could be a completely different person the next, which is, I think, why some people have been banned for leaving reasonable comments, while others, including myself, have engaged in reasonable conversations. And I have in fact been banned and then unbanned by two of these three. I have no idea which one banned me or which one then unbanned me, or why exactly I was banned, but it does get a little bit confusing. But for the sake of this video, I'm going to be totally open-minded and accept the possibility that they are what they say they are, that they are in fact skeptics. As I've said numerous times in the past, I believe in giving people three chances. What I mean by that is three types of chance. The first one is the chance to change my mind. If someone presents me with a reasonable argument and good evidence and citations, then there's a very good chance that I will change my mind, or at very least meet you halfway. The second chance is a chance for them to change their mind. Once again, if they believe that I've presented them with a good argument and I present good evidence, then they have the chance to change their mind, or at very least meet me halfway. The third chance is a chance for them to hang themselves, given enough rope. You know, this is a situation where you've made a reasonable, well-presented argument with abundance of good evidence and citations, and all you get in return is abuse or ad hominems or strawman arguments, or bullshit basically. And when I tend to get that kind of response, I'm more than happy to shine a very bright spotlight on it and expose that type of person for exactly who and what they are. Although, to be perfectly honest, I do prefer the first two options, if possible. Unfortunately, that's not always the case. So, in presenting this video, which I have no doubt the Skeptic Feminists will see, I'm actually giving them those three chances. And hopefully, if they're skeptical, they'll stick with the first two as opposed to the third. But time will tell. I'm somewhat optimistic. But there's also part of me which is a realist and has a lot of experience in this type of thing. So at this point you're probably wondering about the title of this particular episode. Everybody got a Gris Gris. You're probably wondering what that means. A Gris Gris is basically, I think it's a voodoo magic pouch or something like that. The quote comes from Penn Jillette from Penn and Teller. I don't know if it originated with him, but I first heard it from him. And basically what the quote means is that everyone, absolutely everyone, even the most skeptical of people, still holds some kind of nonsense belief which is not based on anything which is reality. But I guarantee you, each and every one of us, including myself, still holds some type of Gris Gris. Probably a good example of a Gris Gris that I used to have years ago, I actually got from a documentary on TV. It seemed like a legitimate documentary about the Roman Empire, and they discussed how the rich upper class Romans would hold great feasts, and once they were full they would go to a special room called a vomitorium, in which they would vomit and then go back and continue eating until they were full again. You know, this kind of made sense at the time. The documentary seemed to be legit. The name of the room, vomitorium, sounds like vomit. So that kind of made sense. And I guess we all have an image of the decadent Romans, you know, having great feasts and all this. It was never really an important issue, so I never really looked into it and researched it to find out whether it was legit or not. But years later I found out it was absolute bullshit. A vomitorium is actually a passageway in a coliseum or amphitheatre where large crowds can exit. So everybody got a Gris Gris. So I guarantee you that I hold Gris Gris, that you hold Gris Gris, and that the skeptical feminists also hold Gris Gris, as we're about to see. Now, let me introduce Tyler. Tyler's a pretty cool guy. I'll leave a link to his channel below. He's a gender egalitarian, so he doesn't use the title feminist, nor does he use the title MRA. He's happy to sit in the middle and acknowledge both sides. He's a fair, open-minded guy. And the video I'm critiquing today, the video I'm going to go through, is basically a hangout he did with the skeptical feminists. Now, it was a fairly long video, and I'm definitely not going through the entire thing, but I suggest any MRAs or anti-feminists out there might want to take a look at it, because I'm sure there's other bits in the video that you might want to do a response to or comment on, or just watch out of interest. But the part I'm responding to today specifically is the part where they are asked to define what an MRA is. And as you imagine, that's perfect material for this video series. I should point out that there were only 2 of the 3 skeptical feminists in the hangout, although they did have a third friend with them. So without any further delay, let's get stuck into it.
Okay, let's see. How do you define like a person who's a men's rights activist?
Well, before we get to their answers, let me give my own answer. Now, this might be just a little bit complex for some people to understand exactly what a men's rights activist is, so listen closely, pay attention. A men's rights activist is someone who's an activist or an advocate for the rights of men. I know that was extremely complex, wasn't it? So, an MRA isn't someone who is interested in getting laid, or chasing pussy, as we are constantly compared to the pickup artists. An MRA isn't someone who hates women or wants to take away women's rights or wants to turn the clock back to the 1950s traditional gender roles bullshit. An MRA isn't someone who is necessarily anti-feminist, although the vast majority of MRAs are by nature anti-feminist, because the mainstream feminist movement is actually against the rights of men in many ways, and we'll get to that later on. Personally, I'm an anti-feminist, but I don't condemn each and every feminist out there. There's actually quite a few feminists who I like and agree with, and who I think actually do the feminist brand proud. But unfortunately, they're in the minority, and the mainstream tends to alienate and look down on them. Now, having said an MRA is someone who advocates for the rights of men, some of those rights that we're talking about are things like bodily integrity, in other words, circumcision, parental rights for fathers, dealing with male homelessness, as the majority of the homeless are in fact male, dealing with male suicide, as the majority of suicide cases are male, the gender sentencing gap, where males are more likely to get longer sentences. Well, actually, they're more likely to be arrested, more likely to go to trial, more likely to be convicted, and more likely to get a longer sentence if convicted. Of course, race is also a factor in this, as black men are far more likely to have these things happen to them than white men, but gender is an even bigger factor, because white men are far more likely to have these things done to them than black women, for example. And white women are the least likely to have these things done to them. Then there's things like the demonization of men and masculinity, which we constantly see these days in the media and in reality as well.